The headline is bin companies meet over plan to freeze charges. And in fact, bin charge headlines were dominating Sunday as well. Things like the Irish Mail on Sunday, clean up this bin mess or we will revolt, warn TDs. On the front of the Business Post, bin charges frozen as civil war looms in waste collection industry. It's all there. Simon Moynihan is here from Bonkers.ie. Simon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Declan.
Good morning. Did you grab that water? I brought you out some water there.
I have it right here.
Your grand stuff. Thanks for coming in. What is going on with us? I mean, obviously, from your point of view, you look at all the companies, if you could, there's about 60 of them, I believe, to see what our best deal is, but we don't actually know the pricing policies.
No, we actually have kept an eye on this because bin charges is something that we get asked an awful lot about. So we get asked to run a comparison to help people understand their bin charges. Unfortunately, bin pricing doesn't seem to be any mandate to make sure that it's kept that it's public. So, for example, it's very difficult to find pricing across individual bin companies. Having said that, I'm sure your listeners are very well aware that bin charges are due to change, or the way we're billed is due to change on July 1st. But there's been quite a lot of controversy, and this is a story that just keeps on coming.
Well, can we go back to the beginning? I think it was January when we first heard about this perhaps nominal charge, but that's in the eye of the beholder, for the green waste, and there was lots of objections to that, and things seem to be ebbing and flowing, and there was the Minister with responsibility, Simon Coveney, having a meeting in Athlone on Friday. Is another meeting scheduled today. Give us a brief synopsis of how we got here.
Sure. Okay. Well, back in January, Alan Kelly, who was the then Minister for the Environment, passed an amendment to the Waste Management Collection Permit legislation. And basically what it said was that we would have to start paying by weight. And this is on the back of earlier EU legislation, which is a sort of a waste directive that operates on what they call the polluter pays principle. Really what that means is that if you put out more rubbish, you should pay more than somebody who puts out less. The idea behind it, of course, is to encourage us to recycle, to compost, and to use less and to reuse. Now, at the time, there was minimum pricing set, and the minimum pricing was 11 cents per kilo for your general household rubbish, 6 cents for your compost, and 2 cents for your green bin. Now, subsequently, Simon Coveney in May scrapped the green bin charge. So there's no minimum pricing for that, or no minimum cost.
Is there a maximum, just a minute of interest?
That's the problem. That's what got us here. So with this minimum pricing, at the time, the government estimated that 87%, we've all heard this figure, estimated that 87% of people would save money on their bin charges. And I think that's based around that minimum pricing structure. Unfortunately, there was no cap put on pricing, and the bin companies, some of the bin companies over the last couple of weeks began writing to their customers and showing their hand basically on what they were going to start charging from July 1st. And instead of 11 cent per kilogram for household waste, a lot of them were putting up to 35 cent, for example. There was also huge increases in standing charges. In some cases, that's the charge that you pay just for having the service. It's before you even put out a bin, and the charging for that in some cases tripled or doubled, or 100 euros was applied where there had been no charge before. So, for example, some bin companies were actually collecting bins and charging you about a tenner to pick up your black bin, and that was it. But now they're introducing standing charges as well as lifting charges and pay-by-weight charges. So a lot of people, we looked at the numbers that we had that were available at the time. This was around about Friday. And we ran them, and we went to see what would it cost you, or would you save money if you were an average user? And we were not able to find a single instance whereby you would save money as an average user.
Were they not telling us 87% of people would
again, that was down to that minimum pricing. But unfortunately, the waste management companies did not. There wasn't a single one that we saw that actually adhered to that minimum pricing. So they didn't charge. Like I said, they were asked to charge, in and around 11 cent per kilo for black bin waste, but the pricing we saw ranged anywhere from 27 up to 35 cent per kilo for black bin waste.
Well, we have been told, it's out there in the private entity, these bin companies, and there's competition in the market. For a lot of people, there's no competition. You have one operator, and what you're telling me really is they can charge what they like.
It seems so, yes. Although this really grew legs when people began receiving their pricing letters, and some of the pricing was published. Interestingly enough, the Independent ran a survey last week where they contacted 60 of the waste management companies, and they think they were only able to get pricing for about 6, and that tallies with us. We weren't able to get pricing for many more than that either. But where we did see pricing, we saw increases in general of about 25%. Or more, and this is for someone who's an average user. Now, the Greyhound, for example, say that their average user uses puts 500 kilos of black bin waste out every year. The Department of the Environment says that we actually put out 600 on average. Now, to give myself as an example, I have a young family, and I put out 700 kilos. And anyone who's got kids or young kids is putting out much more waste than someone who doesn't. And of course, this is down to nappies and the other stuff that simply can't be recycled in any way. Under the new pricing system, for example, I would see an increase of about 50% in what it costs for my bins to be collected. And I'm only 100 kilos above what the Department of the Environment says an average user is. So I would face into very substantial price increases. And I think this is a case for many more. And I do recycle. I'm very careful with what I put out onto the street, but yet I can't see how I would save money under this new pricing structure.
Right. We do have the property tax, of course, but that doesn't actually come into it. And there's an acute issue here in County Wicklow, is that we've got a beautiful county, but I'm told that there's been an increase in fly tipping and people coming into County Wicklow, and maybe people within County Wicklow just dumping.
That's an enormous concern. Actually, what's very interesting about this is the letter of this legislation actually says that we should try to prohibit the dumping or uncontrolled disposal of waste. Now, again, this is down to the polluter pays principle, but the idea behind it as well is we should reduce to an extent where we're not, encouraging uncontrolled disposal of waste. But if we're going to be increasing people's bin charges by 25 or 50%, we're very likely to see an increase in dumping, fly tipping, even people putting rubbish into other people's bins. So I think that unfortunately, these big increases go against both the letter and the spirit of this legislation.
Could I bring in another aspect to it, and that is this big incinerator that is being built in Sandymount, and it'll be very hungry, and there'll be penalties, I'm told, if it's not fed. So what's the relationship between landfill and this thing eating all the rubbish? I mean, surely if it's looking for stuff, it could be very cheap just to dump it up the road to Sandymount.
Well, I suppose it could. I mean, we're already doing that. Bord na Móna is already using household waste to generate electricity. This will be, I'm not sure exactly when this is coming online, but yes, you're absolutely right. It will be hungry. The hope, of course, with this, though, is that we are able to reduce our rubbish and not worry too much about whether they have to pay a penalty as a result of the incinerator.
What do you see the resolution of this? Obviously, with some of those headlines there, the backbench TDs not been happy because, they've Irish water in the back of their minds, or maybe the front of their minds, and they say, here comes again, it's the bin charges, it's the same as water.
Absolutely. I don't think we've seen the government act this fast. I was amazed. Of course, Simon Coveney called a meeting for next Wednesday with waste management company executives. And when all of this started really kicking off, for example, during leaders' questions on Thursday last, where Darragh Hilary put it to Francis Fitzgerald, and there was all sorts going on, that meeting was brought forward to Friday night, and it was held in Athlone. Apparently it was a marathon 4-hour meeting, and my understanding is that Simon Coveney is to present a proposed solution to the problem later today. So I would hold tight for the moment. I don't think we need to start taking our pitchforks onto the streets again just yet. I'm sure the government is going to work very hard to make sure that nobody pays any more than they have done over the last 12 months, for example. And I actually heard that as a statement today, is that's the idea. There's also the Shannon. This hasn't been passed through the Shannon yet. And
I think Sinn Féin are bringing up something on Wednesday, aren't they?
So Sinn Féin are saying that they've proposed that they would bring a motion to not allow this legislation to go through. We also have more action in the Dáil. So the AAA and the people before profit have all said that they're intending to table a motion to scrap this legislation this week. So there's an awful lot of I suppose, hope for people that are looking at much higher bin charges, that I don't know that they will necessarily go ahead, as has been stated by some of the letters people have received over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so the bin companies, I mean, could you say fairly that they're seeing it as an opportunity up to this and up to the interventions as a way of maximising profits?
Well, I mean, the head of Citybin was talking earlier today about how he expected that, a third would pay less, a third would pay the same, and a third would pay more. And I suppose that goes directly to the polluter pays principle. But again, I mean, with pricing that we looked at, it was very difficult to see how people would pay less unless they reduced the amount of rubbish they were putting out by an enormous amount.
Simon Moynihan from Bonkers.ie. And Simon, you do comparisons in electricity and gas and telephones. Do you ever see the day when you can actually do it with waste
disposal?
I
mean, I see no reason why we wouldn't be able to do it with waste disposal. It would just mean that we would need some sort of up-to-date pricing to be provided to us, and that way we'd be able to compare for all the neighbourhoods that we were able to do it for. So yes, I mean, I could certainly see being able to do it. At the moment we can't, because we don't have pricing for all of the companies. There's a lot of smaller operators that don't publish. So and a good example of that would be that I mean, by Friday there was only 6 that we were able to determine companies that had actually published their new pricing, and this is supposed to kick in on July 1st. So maybe, but at the moment it doesn't. Under the current structure, it would be difficult.
Right. And when you think about it, that restaurants and pubs and dentists and others have to publish their prices, to have what seems to be a semi-secretive regime of, we're not actually going to tell you, unless you do sign up and they give you a list of charges.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you can get them, but having some sort of updating system where they're made public. So, for example, if you're an electricity company or a gas company, you must publish all existing tariffs on your website, and they should be easy to find. Those kind of rules do not seem to apply to waste management companies, but that may change with what's happening right now.
Yeah. Well, my big thing is why do we get so much packaging, say, in the first place? Which is probably there to make the products attractive in the supermarket. You get all sort of garish, cardboard around boxes within boxes. So, anyway,
we certainly do seem to have an awful. But we as Irish people seem to be very, very good at recycling. I mean, with the bring centres are always busy. People are very good at separating out their rubbish. I think they're already doing an awful lot of what they can. So the idea that we would reduce, by 40% the amount of waste we're putting out into our black bins, it seems a very high number to me, because I know from anecdotally that Irish people are already very good recyclers. They're already composting. They're already trying to separate out their rubbish. So is there another step they can take to substantially reduce that again? I don't know whether there is.
Yeah. Okay. For all your price comparisons, Bonkers.ie and Simon Moynihan from Bonkers dropped out to see us this morning. Thanks very much indeed.